Sustaining Creativity podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Rochelle Groh, the co-founder of Cutclass and the host of the Allergic to Small Talk podcast. Please enjoy Rochelle Groh. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity podcast. Today, I am here with Rochelle Groh. She is the co-founder of Cutclass and the host of the Allergic to Small Talk podcast. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity podcast.
Woo woo! I'm here.
I love that entrance. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I am super excited to chat with you. But before we dive into the world of creativity, why don't you let my listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Awesome. So I'm originally from California, and I also moved to New York at some point in my career. And now I am in England. And so one of the cornerstones and backbones to my career and education, and now as a business owner, has always been my community and the network that I have around me. And so when I moved to England about 4 years ago, I didn't know anybody but my husband and our 4-year-old son. So talking about starting your life from scratch in terms of city, country, friends, family, it was all very foreign to me. However, I had started over in New York, and I had started over in different careers. So starting over in terms of a career and kind of being in that position wasn't necessarily new for me. But I guess it was almost like a trifecta in terms of all of the starts that were going on for my life in one go. So it was like being a mom at once, being a wife at once, being like starting, your career and entrepreneur and your friends all from scratch. And so what I've learned is to just lean on the people around me. And I built my business, my friendships, and my life all over again in the UK. And I started seeing that I was outperforming my UK counterparts in terms of getting in front of people for business opportunities or networking opportunities. And I thought, you know what? I think this is something I'm really great at, not to toot my own horn, but I realized, I think this is my secret sauce. And this has been something I've been really great at that I didn't know I was good at. And so now I teach other people how to lean on their network to build their businesses.
That's amazing. And I can only imagine how much creativity went into starting from scratch and being a new mom and married and new country and all of that. So I'm sure we'll get to dive into some of that in a little bit, but yeah. So I love that you help people lean on their communities, because there's such an important aspect of creativity that blossoms when you get into community. And I'm curious, how do you see communities showing up for people to kind of support those next steps in new business ventures?
So I love that question. And I think sometimes when people are, wanting to be creative or wanting to take that next step in their business venture, oftentimes they think that they have to meet new people, get new people into their community. However, they already have an existing community around them that maybe they have from elementary school. Maybe it's people from high school. Maybe it's somebody from a career. But because you haven't talked to them in 5 or 6 or 10 years, there's this awkward thing that develops where people go, oh my God, I haven't talked to them in such a long time. How can I ask them for help in this area?
Mm-hmm.
But what's really interesting is that when people lean on like their closest like circle,
Mm-hmm.
those people already have access to the same information typically that you do.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
they're not going to bring necessarily new ideas or new ways to solve problems because their lens is already colored with what you already have going on in your life, because they're probably a little bit closer to you. They already know
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in your life. There's also social constructs that surround their relationship with you and the advice they're going to give you.
Mm-hmm.
So what's really cool about leaning on like an existing network or people that are like 2 to 3 degrees of separation from you, whether it's like
Mm-hmm.
in years or career or education,
Yeah.
is they don't have a lens that's colored by what you're already doing. They have
Mm.
a fresh perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
I always like to dip back into my network that I haven't spoken to in a long time,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not afraid to offend me in the business I'm doing. Because guess what? They don't really know about it,
Right.
or they're not so deep in it to know what they can say or not say. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really cool to get their perspective on it. So that's kind of one of the things I really love to share with people is like, dust off those old contacts and just
Yeah.
reach out and just share what's going on in your life and see what perspective they bring to the table.
Mm, I love that. And I mean, so much creativity or taking a creative risk to reach out definitely shows up in this. I love all of that. And as you were talking, it made me think like, who are the people, 2, 3 degrees in my own circle that I could reach out to and share the things that I'm working on. I love that. I mean, definitely not something that crossed my mind because we are so connected to our immediate circle and how to keep the outer layers of the circle engaged, I guess, is what it kind of feels like.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And I think, and sometimes it's like, we just kind of keep our like, it's almost like we want to keep the good bits to the people around us and maybe not
Yes.
share kind of some of the, maybe the warts or like the bruises that we're kind of going through in business. But sometimes those are the best things to like share with people that are kind of outside of that circle so you can
Mhm.
get some new ideas. So yeah, hopefully
Yeah.
that is a good,
Oh my gosh.
a good point there.
It's a great tip. A super tip. But let's dive into some more creativity. So, what does it mean to you to be creative?
I really love this question too. By the way, I love all these questions. Um, so creativity to me really means working with limited resources or being disadvantaged in some way and still seeing a way out.
Mhm.
So I always like to use my example of moving to the UK and literally knowing nobody, but I
Yeah.
figured out how to create every aspect of my life all over again.
Mhm.
But it also can apply to certain other aspects of creativity. So another example I'd like to share is like I started doing like short form videos because it's so like popular right now, like reels and TikToks and whatever,
Mhm.
and going live, doing a podcast. And I used to be so nervous and scared about sounding stupid, looking stupid. Like, what are
Right.
people going to think about me?
Uh,
But it's also like leaning into that uncomfortableness, leaning
mhm.
into what will people think about me, and just like doing it anyways and seeing what is going to come from that awkwardness and that fear and those limited resources.
Mm.
So um that's kind of what creativity means to me, is just being disadvantaged in some way and leaning into the awkward.
Mm. I love it. I've not, no one has ever shared that version of it before. And I love hearing new ways that people experience and express and basically own creativity. And it reminds me of, well, as you were talking, kind of riding the edge of your comfort zone is really where that creativity comes alive.
That's such a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. I love it. It's co-creating here that we're doing. It's perfect. Well, as you were kind of also talking of those challenges or that self-doubt or the questions of, am I going to look stupid or silly or is it not going to land with people? How do you face those creative challenges?
So I think we all like face those creative challenges at some point is with, if it's a task or a project. And so for me, I really like to honor like the uncomfortableness, the awkwardness, the fear. And I don't try to create from that space. Sometimes I'll go, you know what, this is how I'm feeling. And I'll walk away and I'll do something else if I want to do something else and not force the project that I want to get done. Because my subconscious is still working on that task that I know I need to do. Like it's not going to go away.
Right.
So I go away and I'll do something else, whether it's like walking, binging Netflix if I have to do it, because that is just what's going to level set me. And then I go back to the task, and the awkwardness and the fear is still there, but I've kind of already acknowledged it. I've honored it. I've said, all right, that is what it is. And then I went and took some time away, and now I'm going to create what I need to do. So that's kind of how I manage my creative challenges, is just kind of going, all right, this is what it is. And I'm not going to create from this space right now, but I'll do it when I'll like blow off some steam and I'll come back to it.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's essentially that being really mindful and aware of the present moment experience that you're talking about. This is happening, and I'm making a choice to step away from it, and I'll come back to it later. I think we forget that we have those choices in those moments. We don't have to force it.
100%. Like I remember watching, it's a good friend of our business. His name's John Hillstead. He's super awesome. And he had put out a TikTok, and he's like, listen, I know that I need to get my like course out or whatever it is. He's like, but I just don't want to do it right now. Like, I just don't want to do that. And he's like, and so I'm going to go take a walk, and I'm just going to go take my walk and look at like nature and do what I want to do. And I'll come back to this. And I was like, oh yeah. And like, that's such a great tip. And I realized actually that's what we kind of all do. If we're binging Netflix, if we're like staying on a phone conversation for too long, we're turning off the thing that we don't want to do already. You know what I mean? And then we come back to whatever it is later.
Yeah. It's that coming back to it. I think so many people don't come back to it. And that's where more of that doubt and fear and anxiety really gets charged from. They're like, oh, I didn't do it. And then we have that tape of whatever we tell ourselves.
It's just like an ending loop.
Yeah, it is. Well, more great tips. I love all the tips and tools and skills. It's so helpful. But I'm now going to ask this very fun question that has nothing to do with your business. But what's your earliest memory of being creative?
So my earliest memory of being creative, it's not like when I'm like 2 or 3. Like, I don't know how people have these like phenomenal memories. Like mine is just terrible. So my earliest memory of being creative was when I was playing sports as a kid, and I played all the sports. And I remember playing baseball, and I was one of the few girls that played baseball, and I was a catcher. And back then, and probably still now, there weren't like cups for females.
Yeah.
So, you know, we still have bits that could get injured, right? So
right.
I
a
was
cup
like,
is
well,
a protective gear. I guess
right.
It's like for people who don't know what that
don't
is.
know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it like protects your, you know, your bits. And they didn't make any for women. So I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm just gonna have to wear like 3 overnight pads, because that's just what I'm gonna have to do. And I know it's not the most creative, but I was like, that was the memory that came to mind. I was like, well, yeah, I had to like protect myself and figure out how to like still go to my game. And that's like what it turned out to be.
Oh my God. I mean, like so creative. That's amazing. Like seriously, super, super creative. Something that would protect you, that you could still move in. Cause as a catcher, you had to be like, have some agility when you're in that stance and then moving. Yeah.
My husband totally laughed because I was going over my answers with him and like reviewing with him. He was like, you're going to say that? I was like, well, that's the earliest memory.
How old were you? If you don't mind me asking.
I think I was like 6 or 7.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Little kid brains. We're going to do it. We're going to make something work and do what needs to get done. And we don't think too much about it.
Yeah. So anyways.
I love these answers. And I just love how it takes you back to that little kid space. I'm curious, from kind of childhood, are there any things that you did as a kid that you don't do now that you think maybe you want to try again?
Yes. So as a kid, I was very messy and very
Mm.
sloppy and like didn't really care about containing things or keeping
Mhm.
things organized. But now that I'm an adult and I have like my husband and I have this house to manage, we have a 4-year-old. I'm like the most organized like person in the world. Like I wish that a part of me could just like let go of that
Yeah.
like rule I have on myself to be
Mhm.
organized, to keep things, running in the house, because these are just my rules. I've created them. These are my
Yeah.
expectations. And so I do wish like some part of me could just like let mess be mess because I
Mm.
can't let that happen with my son at the moment. He creates a mess and I love that about him. He just
Mhm.
can't see mess. He's just playing. I
Yeah.
do wish I could go back and do those things again.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
I hope you do. I hope you get
Yeah.
to have some moment of that wherever it is with your son or in some other capacity. Because it sounds, I mean, as you're talking, it sounds there's a lot of freedom in it. There's a lot of like getting to be messy. I don't know if you ever like made, pine cone stew as a kid or like
That's
mud
cool.
pies or something outside. You could be super messy and it was there was so much freedom in that and a way to kind of like integrate your experience too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I probably should get back into like some form of messiness because obviously there's some missing element for me.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows what it will be? But I love these. I love how things can kind of bubble up and help us continue to be the organized adults. But it's nice to have a space to be messy.
Yeah,
I
100%.
appreciate that. Yeah. Well, considering that you have this huge network of people, I imagine you have many people who inspire you, but what are the things, who or what inspires you the most these days?
So I would say helping others achieve or do better in their life really inspires me. And I think at every stage in my life, my inspiration has evolved and it's shifted and it's changed.
Mm-hmm.
And my younger self, I would say, it was my education, it was my career, getting to the executive suite. And I think all of that was very like ego centric, like very
Mm-hmm.
stuff that was definitely like feeding my ego. Now
Mm-hmm.
I'm really doing things that are feeding my soul. And
Mm.
I really, truly like to see people doing so great in their businesses or doing just really great in their lives because we have somehow collaborated in some way. We've somehow exchanged knowledge in some way.
Mm.
I've been a mentor to them in some way.
Mm.
So I really, really love, and that gives me my inspiration to continue waking up every day, continue my
Mhm.
business every day. So yeah, it's kind of what feeds me.
Nice. I love that you brought in those different stages or seasons of inspiration and that early on, more ego driven. Because I don't think we think about that often, how inspiration can be driven by our ego sometimes, or where we want to go, or who we want to be. And that the beauty that we get to choose who we want to be and how we show up and making a different choice and how much that fuels a different part of us is such a gift to give
Right.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not wrong, it's
No.
just is. It's just kind of being okay with like, yeah, I wanted those things for my life. I did want the big fancy car. It's okay, you
Yeah,
know, but then that can shift and change over time.
absolutely. Great reminder. I think many people forget that it can shift as we grow and change. Things that inspire us or things that we want in our life will also grow and change too. You don't have to hold on to those things forever. It's not a
Right.
rule, hard and fast rule. Yeah. What are some of the everyday issues or challenges that you have that you've used creativity to solve?
Okay, so this is a good one. Well, I was thinking about this question. I go, dang, like, what are some of these everyday things? Is it like cleaning my house, washing my dishes? And for me, I guess everyday things I do are like, it's just like, I thought about it in terms of communication. Like we're always texting somebody or emailing or, writing something. So that was kind of the thing that stood out to me. And so how I've used creativity to manage that everyday um, issue, because sometimes it can be an issue.
Yeah.
It's not always like, hey, I'm coming home. What do you want what do you want from the shop or something?
Mm-hmm.
It could be some real thing. And so I like to just tell myself to just like just
Mm-hmm.
write. And I think people, including well, me, I would just say me, I think that I used to get really hung up on having the perfect message, having it have the perfect angle, having it sound right, having it this way. And so when I'm able to like let go of that and literally just kind of have like thoughts written
Mm-hmm.
out one after another without editing, without like revising anything and
Mm-hmm.
just writing, that's when I can produce my best work. That's when I can
Mm-hmm.
send like the most heartfelt message
Mm-hmm.
because I'm able to kind of let everything out and then come back and revise later so that I can actually write my first draft. But
Mm-hmm.
the first like I guess iteration are just thoughts or
Yeah.
and they can even be half thoughts. So that's been kind of one of my ways of just solving that issue and
Mm-hmm.
also setting a time limit to it. So
Mm-hmm.
I usually will use the Pomodoro technique, meaning I work for 25 minutes, I'll take a 5-minute break, and then I'll repeat that.
Mm-hmm.
After 4 Pomodoros, so that's 4 25-minute sessions, I take a 20 or 30-minute break. And of course that like will apply to whatever the task or project is. So I
Mm-hmm.
give myself the freedom to just write and then set a time limit on that.
Mm-hmm. Nice. As you were talking and saying just kind of like the thoughts or half thoughts, it made me think of like maybe that's your mess. Maybe that's your messiness.
Yeah,
You get to be
maybe it is.
messy.
I didn't think about it that way, but totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is for sure a mess. Like no one wants to see that first pre-draft. Like it is not cool.
And you wouldn't show it to anyone, but it's like
No.
your space to be messy. I think that's
Yeah.
great. Oh, I love the little surprises that show up in these chats. Nice. Well, how would you encourage others who don't think they're creative to find creativity in their lives?
I would encourage others to find creativity in their lives by stripping back all the roles they play, like
Mm.
mom, dad, wife, business owner, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And also letting go of the like rules that
Mm.
are attached to them. So I think we kind of uncovered one of those for me, which is like being a mom, being a wife, and like having to be organized in my
Mm-hmm.
home. So that would be something that I could release and let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're in that place, like it does give you that freedom to allow you to do that task or problem or project at hand, but in a
Mm-hmm.
different and new perspective. So, yeah, that's kind of my tip for people that think that they're not creative, but definitely have a creative spirit that's in them. They just got to, I would say, release all of those roles and the rules that are attached to them.
Mm. Such a good reminder and tip, and that permission, give yourself that permission to let go of those rules and the rules that you've created and see what happens. There's got to be some magic in that, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I think about like people that are like 20 years my junior, and I
Mhm.
think, gosh, like if I think about when I was that age and I didn't have these responsibilities and I didn't have these things, like how would I approach my job today?
Mm.
Like how would I approach that? Like let me get into that person's headspace. And it does allow me to kind of create from a new space.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's great to have that, or kind of play around with like, what's the world's worst idea to
Right,
do
100%.
this? And you never know, some amazing things come out of that.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, it has been such a treat chatting with you. I have one more question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
It feels light, and it also feels at times jarring.
Yeah.
So
I love that. The realness, it's great.
Yeah, I think lightness in terms of like when I create my best work is when I'm in flow. So I'm sure you might be familiar with like being in, the concept of flow.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't last forever.
Right.
But I love being in flow because I feel so light and airy, and I just can produce some like platinum work. But then on the other hand, it's also jarring because it's that like tiny solo conversation in your brain about like, well, what are people going to think about this? Well, how is this going to land for people? So it can be a bit jarring, like, holy crap, like that was so great and fun to ideate and create and bring into the world. And that flow felt so good because it could be it almost feels like a little bit like a drug, like, oh, it's so addictive. But then thinking about how is that going to land for other people? So that's where the jarring part comes in.
Nice. But I love the light, like there's some balance happening in that. Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. And if people want to learn more about all of the things you do and where to find your podcast, how would they go about doing that?
You can find me at letscutclass.com, and on there you can find all of our resources. You can take a quiz to figure out what type of networker you are, and the quiz is called What Type of Networking Animal Are You? And you can check out my podcast there too, called Allergic to Small Talk.
Wonderful. I love it. And I will put all of this in the show notes. Again, thank you so much for chatting with me. It's been such a treat.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.